Hi, everyone. We will get started here in about a minute. Okay, looks like we have some folks joining us, so we will go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thank you for being here with us today. I'm Kaya Swift, and I'm the marketing manager for Heller Consulting. Today's topic is digital transformation with Microsoft products for nonprofits. Before we get started, I'll cover a few housekeeping items. We'll have about a 30-minute conversation, and then we'll be opening it up to questions. Many of you have already submitted questions, so thank you, and I will be reading those during the Q&A at the end. All attendee lines have been muted, so if you have a question throughout, please drop it in the question box. I will be monitoring those, and I will ask those at the end. Today's conversation will run for about 45 minutes, and a recording of this will be sent to you via email tomorrow. And with that, I will pass the mic over to Heller Consulting's founder and chief strategist, Keith Heller. Keith?
Great, thanks, Kaya. Really appreciate you making all this happen today. So today's webinar, we're gonna hear the story of the Arthritis Foundation. It's very exciting how they leveraged Microsoft products, especially some that are built specifically for nonprofits to really expand their fundraising efforts, and even in the past year in difficult circumstances. I'm going to say a little bit about strategy as it relates to technology. Christina, who's joining us today from MISSION CRM, the president, was going to provide her technical expertise and talk about the MISSION CRM solution. And Andy, the CIO from Arthritis, is going to really share with us how these things all tie together in a very practical and powerful way. So I appreciate everybody attending today. And Kaya, I think I probably read the next slide already, but there we are. For the record, we're here. This is us. So you can advance. Great. Christina.
Awesome. Well, good afternoon. My name is Christina Herancourt, and I'm part of this trio today having a conversation about Microsoft, nonprofits, and digital transformation. And just to set the stage, a little bit about who we are at MISSION CRM. Our mission is to accelerate the momentum of nonprofits operations so they can make a difference in the world. We're very grateful to have the Arthritis Foundation as one of those clients that's really led the charge in transformation on the Microsoft platform. And for us, that's all we've ever done is build on Dynamics 365. Because from the very beginning, we believed in the power of what Microsoft has done with Dynamics to transform nonprofit operations. So what does that actually look like today? And Kai, if you can just advance to the next slide. You know, it's a whole new world. So let me just kind of set the stage of what we're going to be talking about today. At its core, we have Dynamics 365. And really the good news is nonprofits today have so many options when they're starting to think about their transformation strategy and how Dynamics can really be a new home for your donor management and fundraising operations. This is a big decision. And the good news is Microsoft has made some significant investments in the past couple of years. Specifically, if you look at that core, that circle, that black Dynamics 365 plus common data model, that is the revolutionizing force in nonprofit technology today. This is the investment that Microsoft has made to be able to then build on top of that for donor management and fundraising. And that evolves to fundraising and engagement, which is what Arthritis Foundation has as its base foundational layer today. And that's a solution that's available for free to nonprofit organizations around the world to enable them to get that first step into donor management and fundraising on top of Dynamics 365. This is the great place to start to know and grow your donor base and get closer to your constituents. And then what does MISSION CRM do? Well, we layer on top of all of that amazing technology. So we take advantage of everything Microsoft has built and take it to the next level. So we kind of elevate that strategy. So we get a little bit more sophisticated and advanced in the technology, but all still grounded and rooted in the Microsoft Dynamics 365 and common data model for nonprofits. And so what does that evolve into? Well, I like to think of it as a brand new home, a place where nonprofits can start to think about how their strategy can be served through technology. So Kaya, if you wouldn't mind just advancing to the next slide. Again, at its core, we have Dynamics 365 wrapped around it, all the amazing functionality that fundraising and engagement has out of the box for nonprofits today. And then again, some of the more integrated next level functionality that we've built with Microsoft's on top of Dynamics 365. So really, I like to think of this, Keith, as a platform for possibilities. I think Andy and his team are emblematic of how they can take a vision, they can take a platform like Dynamics, fundraising, engagement, and mission, and really start to drive transformation forward. But I would like to say, just before I pivot back to you, that that journey, crafting that vision and that strategy, really is so better amplified by working with a team like a Heller or others who can help craft what that long-term journey is. This doesn't happen in a heartbeat, as you well know, Keith. This happens over time with smarts, intelligence, and steps along the way, because it's a lot to manage for any organization of any size.
Thanks, Christina. That's a great lead-in to a little bit about Heller. So yes, these kinds of projects are very rewarding, and like anything that's rewarding, it takes a bit of effort. And so it's been our pleasure to help nonprofits figure out their technology strategies and execute on those for the last 20 plus years. Actually, this year will be 25 years. And as you can see from the slide, we've worked with a lot of organizations over time and all across the country. And I like to always focus on our people. You know, we're a boutique firm. We got about 30 folks, and everyone who works for Heller has come to us after working at 2 or 3 nonprofits, and is really committed to what we're doing. Broad thinkers, very smart, very funny, very personable. It's in our URL. We're a team Heller. So we work together well amongst ourselves and with your, you know, with our clients. And it's a big deal when nonprofits are going through this kind of change. Nobody signed up to work at a nonprofit and said, geez, I really hope I get to go through a database conversion. That'd be awesome. You know, that's just something we have to do to get to the work we really want to do. Except for some of us, maybe us panelists, we're like, you know, I would like to do this over and over and over again. So that's what Heller does. If you could advance, Kaya, you know, the 3 areas of expertise for us, you know, before you get going on the journey, where are you going? You know, it's a lot better to consult the map before you get in the car and leave your driveway. So that's what we help people do, is figure out what's our technology roadmap? Where do we want to get to over the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years? We call that CRM strategy. And then, of course, you have to put the CRM in place. So, you know, Dynamics and Mission Fundraising and Engagement, Mission CRM, very powerful solutions, right? You know, a lot of options. So how do you make those choices? How do you make it work for your organization? That's what we come in and do. And then, of course, as soon as you say to people, hey, we're going to do a technology project, what does everybody do? They freak out. And so how do you help people through what often feels like an intimidating and uncertain process? Well, when you've gone through it dozens or hundreds of times, you know, we can kind of bring some wisdom to bear, and we do some hand holding, and that's part of what we appreciate about working in the nonprofit sector, is there is a culture of taking care of each other as we do these types of things. So wrap that all together. That's what we do. So enough about us. Andy, you're our star today.
No, I think Christina's the star.
Okay, I'm not the star, so I can.
Or maybe you. I don't know.
But
one of us is.
Well, digital transformation, you know, it's a big catchphrase. I'm curious, Andy, you know, what does it mean to the Arthritis Foundation, and what's been the motivators and the opportunities over the past couple of years as you've made these big changes?
I guess probably the shortest and simplest answer to that is it kind of began when I started with the Arthritis Foundation in June of 2016, which is almost 5 years ago now. And it was pretty evident, I was coming in from the private sector, and I had a long history and technology background. That it was evident to me when I began to look at the whole landscape. Look at our staff, look at the systems that we had, and how they were being managed, and how data was being. How did people view data? How did they consume it? When I looked at the whole big picture, it was evident to me that we were in need of an upgrade across the board. Systems, staffing, and the culture, and to get people to start thinking about information and how to use information to help us achieve the mission. And we were pretty behind the curve, and very far behind the curve in a lot of those areas. It was kind of an eye opener.
And you made this transition over the last year, which, as we all know, has been a heck of a year. How did the pandemic influence this project and the need for this project, and what Arthritis Foundation is now able to do?
It started basically coming up with a 3-year plan on what we needed to do. There's a lot of change, and anytime there's change, there's a lot of friction, right? So before anybody ever imagined the pandemic and COVID, we had a 3-year plan in place for what we were going to do, and I think we're going to talk about that in a minute. But specific to COVID, obviously, with us and with a lot of other nonprofits, it triggered downsizing. The good news is, and this was sheer luck, we didn't have a crystal ball. Nobody could have predicted this. But by then we had already implemented our first wave, which was our productivity software, getting people standardized on the same hardware on the desktop, Microsoft 365, Teams, eliminated all of our crazy phone systems and consolidated around Teams, and asserted some control over document management and retention with SharePoint, and all of the other benefits that come along with SharePoint, search and everything else. And that was a pre-COVID game plan that we were just lucky that was all in place before the pandemic hit. And then when it did, we went right into remote working and doing more with fewer people without a hitch. It couldn't have been. It was luck. It was good planning, a good strategy. The pandemic was unforeseen. It was just fortunate that we had that all in place by the time that it struck.
Well, Andy, I love that, and I'm going to differ in just one part, which is my little soapbox. Having a plan is not luck. At any point, we can decide, hey, let's make a plan. The fact that you had already made your plan is great. And the other thing that I really appreciate is sometimes when folks have a plan, when the unexpected happens, they abandon the plan, and instead you dove in. And I think that shows a lot of wisdom and fortitude, because sometimes it can be hard in challenging circumstances to say, you know what, we made a plan and we're going to stick with it. It's not the circumstances we thought, but we're going to see this through. Not we're going to put the plan on hold and come back to it when things get to normal again. And no matter what the surprise conditions, we usually never get back to the normal we had before. So kudos to you. Now, you've shared with me before kind of like a 3-step process for digital transformation. So stop holding out and share it with everyone else.
Okay. And I already mentioned the first wave, which was to put modern PCs, which we went with Surface because we got a spectacular nonprofit price on them, and they're small and light. People were carrying around these big, like enormous, clunky laptops. So we standardized on Surface, put modern PCs, and Office 365 E5, which I mentioned, is the full full ride for the Microsoft 365, formerly known as Microsoft Office suite, which included Teams, and we were able to eliminate a huge variety in 46 field offices around the country, plus our headquarters in Atlanta, all these crazy phone systems that, you know, were expensive and nothing worked together. So that was the first wave, was to get the desktop and get our telephony act together and start to prepare for what was going to come next. The second wave was to move everything to the cloud. Next to data center, gone. And part of that, or in addition to that, was replacing all of our external facing assets, fundraising systems, event management systems, our website and community tools, and in addition to improving all of that constituent or public facing tooling and improving the experience there, making us look a bit more modern and a bit more appealing to people who find us organically. We had to get control of all of our siloed information. You know, a lot of nonprofits, they have a lot of collection points. You know, they've got advocacy systems, they've got volunteer systems, they've got survey systems, in addition to their fundraising and donor management and, you know, meat and potatoes, you know, core systems. We took all that siloed information and began to feed that into a data lake so that we could get control of our data. Vendors no longer controlling our data, all of our data in one place in a data lake. And then we'd run sophisticated, I like to think of them as sophisticated processes for normalizing that data, deduplicating data, because a lot of the same people come in through different channels. So then that feeds into a data warehouse that we use for analytics and reporting. And the rationale for that and going through all of that work was not just to get control of our data, but was also to help culturally kind of help folks in the organization begin to think about data-driven decisions as opposed to guessing. And you know, you can't tell people to make data-driven decisions if you don't deliver them the data. And then the third wave, which was probably the most strategic, was to implement Dynamics 365 CRM, layering mission donor management on top of that platform, using the common data, you know, because it snaps to the common data model, and also marketing automation, so that we had the main things that the main tools that we were going to use to propel us through the next decade were in place. The Dynamics 365 CRM platform, a modern state-of-the-art donor management capability, and marketing automation all in one, so that we're not doing all of this crazy ETL, data migration connectors and all this other kind of stuff, because it's hard and expensive and it doesn't work well. So those were kind of the three waves. And I have to say, I have to say that you know, the hard part of it, as with any nonprofit, is the donor management part of it, and that's why we picked Mission. And I'm not doing a commercial for Mission. I could not have had a better experience with a vendor, that a strategic partner than Mission. We couldn't have done it without them. And it was a lot of work, and I feel like we made the right choices in that area. I think I'm embarrassing Christina, making her blush, but I mean that sincerely, that it was the best vendor experience I've had in my entire tenure at the Arthritis Foundation, without a doubt.
All right, well, it's really tempting to ask you more about that right now, but I'm going to wait just a slide or two, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the technology. And you know, before I move forward to the next question, I just want to point out, for folks who are maybe newer to some of the systems that are being talked about here, Dynamics CRM, Teams, what's a data lake? You know, these are all things that are coming out of Microsoft. And one of the important things to know is, if you move in the direction of adopting this technology, you're by far not the first person. There are literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of organizations around the globe using all of these technologies and using them, putting them through their paces, paying for them. That money goes to R&D for Microsoft, obviously one of the largest tech companies in the entire world, who are using those R&D funds to improve and refine these products. And then all of that kind of trickles down to us in the nonprofit sector. So sometimes we in the nonprofit sector, we have to choose, we're presented with choices from vendors where they're much smaller scale and they don't have the resources. And we're a little bit taking a chance. Here, when you adopt technology from Microsoft, obviously the risk level is so much lower and the sophistication is so much higher than we could ever pay for on our own. Instead, we get to benefit. So I like to make that point. Now, when you have all this commercial technology, it can seem like, well, yeah, but it's not, how's it going to work for nonprofits? Well, that's where the CDM, the common data model, comes in. And I could try and explain it, but we have an expert here. So Christina, I wonder if you could say a little bit about what is this CDM thing and why do I care?
Oh, well, it's an acronym that actually packs a very powerful punch, Keith. So let me kind of just layer it back for a moment. When Microsoft started this journey of supporting nonprofits, it did what it could do best, which was how can technology be utilized to resolve some of the biggest issues that they saw in the nonprofit ecosystem. And one of those fundamental problems is what Andy outlined 2 seconds ago, which is having an array of disparate, disconnected solutions, data not being in the same place, everything speaking a different language. And those data silos and those cumbersome processes have a lot of impact on organizations every day. So that data dictionary, I like to think of the common data model as a universal language, so that anything using that common data model speaks to one another. We don't have to worry about building bridges and integrations. From the get-go, if we all speak that common data model for nonprofit language, it means we can surface that data anywhere in the Microsoft ecosystem without any integrations, any duct tape, any bubble gum, it's gone. So the ability to surface data, speak that language, have that Power BI report surface, have that data rise up in Dynamics. That is what Microsoft has given us, the tools to be able to have a world where there are no data silos, where every facet of our operations that are built on the CDM can speak to one another. And so that investment that started out with a language today can be seen in what Microsoft has now built on that language, like fundraising and engagement and other things to come, as well as other vendors who build on the common data model. So what does that mean? It means if someone has an app that speaks the common data model, immediately from the get-go, it connects with what we do at Mission CRM, or for example, fundraising and engagement. So you have that peace of mind, you have the resolution of data silos, and you have a platform that's set up specifically to support nonprofits' growth for the future. And so I like to think of the CDM as the universal language, and the platform itself, that's where the possibility resides. So Andy's a great example of starting in one place and now having a home for the future at the Arthritis Foundation, excuse me.
Great. Well, Andy, so you led the implementation of fundraising and engagement and the advanced functionality that Mission CRM offers. What's that meant to the Arthritis Foundation to make that move, and specifically in the relationship with its supporters?
I think it's probably an hour-long presentation on all the benefits, but I know we don't have that kind of time. I think it's important to say though that our former donor management systems and fundraising systems were fundamentally unusable when it came to our most important people. And this is our staff, the people who do the hard work in a nonprofit, who are going out there and raising money and conducting, executing the mission, helping people, raising money, and all the other value that they add to whatever community the nonprofit is focused on. The established methods that we had were to rely on they were kind of old school. You know, it was kind of to rely on IT or an operations team to give them reports, or, you know, to have somebody else do the work for them because the systems were too hard to use or too complex. You know, they're kind of in the way of them doing what they needed to do in order to do their jobs. And, you know, and my philosophy in all of this was, let's put the data and the tools in the hands of the people who need them so that they can, you know, all of the information that they need to do their jobs is available to them without having to go ask permission or to wait 2 weeks for somebody to get around to producing a report for them. And on demand and information accessible to people when they need it, where they need it, and surprisingly, in all of that. And I believe that's what we delivered on. And mission is central to that. That's what people look at today. Our people in the field around the country, they look at mission dashboards and reports to find out, so they can understand at a glance how they're doing, and look up, you know, all of the whatever information they need in order to do their job, whether it be corporate sponsor or an individual donor or whatever the case might be. It's all right there for them, and it's all accessible in ways that they never imagined or couldn't do before. Surprisingly, kind of in conclusion, we shut down all of our legacy systems in Q4 of 2020, and we were ready for a lull. You know, we were already well into the pandemic. We were ready to take a beating on revenue, and you know, we kind of planned for that. And to our surprise, even though we implemented all of this new tooling and retired all this legacy stuff that people have been using or trying to use for years, we set a fundraising record in Q4. So I'm like, this makes me look awesome, but you know, it wasn't. That really wasn't what it was. What it was that it was what I just said. You know, like we didn't impede, you know, people's ability to do their jobs. We empowered them to do their jobs, and they were able, because they were rallying and they were trying, you know, doing the best they could do under the most dire circumstances. They had what they needed to do their jobs, and they just knocked it out of the park. And you know, that's the best success story that we have. It's not a technology story, it's a business success story. And we're all very proud of that and grateful.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's a great story. Christina, you know, you're very close to the fundraising engagement solution. You know, what excites you about it? What others? How are you seeing organizations really use it to connect with their constituents?
Absolutely. You know, as a co-builder of fundraising engagement, I can say with absolute authenticity and authority that, you know, it's the perfect first step for organizations who want to know and grow their relationships with their constituents. And what do I mean by that? Well, central to any contact record, we have the heart and soul of the relationship an individual has with the organization. And I think all of those disparate data points coming into what we call that constituent snapshot, which shows right there when you look at a contact record, what that constituent has done with the organization. What are their supporting objectives? Why do they give? Why do they care? How can we bring them closer to us in our interactions by knowing who they are, by knowing what the last communication was that we had with them? What was their last gift? So we can start to deepen those relationships with fundraising and engagement. That's exactly what it's designed to deliver. And I think it really does that and knocks that out of the park by being able to have transactions in real time, gifts present themselves, knowing what that donor did in that last few minutes or past few days, being able to be in touch and in tune versus having to have uploads and updates, you know, at the end of the week. This is real-time living. This is moment to moment, so that we have that IQ in that one place. So if people change, things change. We don't need to worry about the intelligence walking out the door or being lost. It's all saved in fundraising and engagement, which I think is a pretty transformational leap in and of itself for organizations today who want to start to get more strategic with segmenting and knowing their donor database.
Great. Well, it's almost time for Q&A. So, but I do want to get one more question in, which is, Andy, you've talked quite a bit. You've talked in earlier conversation we've had about what it's meant in adopting these solutions when it comes to cost, which is always top of mind for nonprofits. What's it meant to your budget to adopt these?
You'll probably be happy, Keith, that my answer to that is a lot shorter than my last one. The bottom line is the first two phases that I talked about before were mostly accomplished, in fact, entirely accomplished by cutting waste, just cutting out, trimming fat out of the budget. And we didn't need an incremental budget increase to do those first two waves. But in 2020, we saved $1 million when we shut down our old legacy CRM and donor management systems. We saved $1 million in IT operating expense by not renewing licenses, hosting fees, and $1 million. I don't care how big or how small an organization is, $1 million is a lot of money in anybody's book in the nonprofit world. And that was immediate savings. And our recurring savings by implementing the Microsoft platform and Mission were about $750,000 a year. Wow. And the reason for that is we no longer need an army to support our system, our core system. And we have new people. We have and I guess my final point in all of that is that staffing and finding talent who understand Dynamics 365 CRM and understand the Microsoft stack and understand the common data model is a lot easier than it is to find people who have an understanding of systems that are proprietary or unique to the nonprofit world that have been around for a really long time. That's a smaller world. Now we've got a world of 1 million developers and system integrators and consultants. And our opportunity to recruit talent is expanded exponentially by going to the Microsoft platform.
That's a great point, Andy, because people often overlook, they look at the technology cost. And of course, Microsoft is very well known for decades of being very philanthropic with its technology. So right there, license fees, things like this, a lot lower than most things you're going to find out there. But then the cost of staffing and the availability of staffing, that's a huge, almost hidden cost that as you say, you benefit greatly from moving towards this much more ubiquitous technology stack. So, all right, we could keep going.
People are the biggest cost. So anyway, I'm sorry, go on.
No, I'm often called the largest cost in the firm, so I don't know what to make of that. But I try to take it as a compliment and keep going. We have some questions. So maybe Kaya, you could tee those up for us.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm going to combine about 3 questions into one for Andy. It sounds like folks are really curious about the details of the implementation. So what were some of the key challenges, lessons learned, stumbling blocks that you encountered during the project? And then how did you address those throughout?
Well, there's always a lot of challenges whenever you're basically transforming the business or the infrastructure supporting it. But I would say that the greatest challenge was dealing with the data that was in our legacy CRM system. That to be honest, it wasn't managed properly for the decade or so that system in its latest form existed, and trying to make sense of the data, trying to make sense of how data was organized in the old system and how to extract it and make sure that we're putting clean data into the new system and not losing information, keeping the most relevant information, and getting rid of what was no longer necessary was probably the long pole in the tent. That was the longest, most labor-intensive aspect of the project. Not so much the technology or getting things lit up. It was about making sure that the data that we moved into the new system was right, and that we weren't sacrificing anything. And Mission, And again, I'm not, you know, I'm not exaggerating that, you know, their assistance in that was phenomenal. Couldn't have done it without them.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Andy. I have another one for you about details of the project. We talked about, you know, people being such a huge part of this project. So someone was curious about the size of your team and the roles that were involved in this decision and the adoption, and then how many users were impacted by this change.
When we began, we had 450 employees nationwide, all of them potential users or consumers of, you know, the information, donor information, and fundraising, and all the other, you know, related data and transactional kind of stuff that we do, fundraising, transactional stuff that we do. When I began in 2016, there was a team of 27 people. It's now 12 total. That includes PC support. It includes system administration. It includes website management, and of course CRM and accounting. So we're basically, by moving to the Microsoft stack, we basically cut the size of the team in half.
All right. The next question is for all three of you. This person said, we looked at Dynamics in Microsoft about 5 years ago, and we're evaluating it again now. What has changed in the last 5 years or so that we should keep in mind?
That's a big question.
Very big question.
That's another webinar. I will say at the biggest level, I'll put in a few things. They've really emphasized everything being web-based, right? So all of their solutions are now available and best in a hosted environment, in a multi-tenant hosted environment. So you're not buying servers when you're buying their technology. Another thing, and this is even maybe more revolutionary, is the integration across products is phenomenal. So when you open up Dynamics, which is fundraising and engagement, which is Mission CRM, it looks like Outlook, and you actually interact with it through Outlook. And then you post, you know, your reports and things through Teams. And this stuff is seamless. You're not exporting out of one system and importing into another. If you're looking up data across, you know, all of your different Microsoft solutions, it's pulling from the same data sources. So that integration, which is possible because everything is in the cloud, is just tremendous. So those are a couple of highlights I'd offer. I wonder, Andy or Christina, what you would say.
Christina, you can go. I'll go last.
Yeah, I mean, 5 years ago is about the age we are today, right? So if I had to kind of parallel my world with Microsoft's world, these are my highlights. First of all, Tech for Social Impact was born in 2017, and that is a division within Microsoft wholly focused on the digital transformation of nonprofits. So since TSI was born, we've seen the common data model for nonprofits. We've seen increased activity in promoting and hopefully sharing how technology can really transform operations. Common data model, fundraising engagement, and all of this other functionality that has culminated into the Microsoft Cloud for nonprofits. That has been a humongous amount of work. The momentum that Microsoft has brought to the table in terms of serving the sector has been unparalleled. And so I think if you were to open up door number 3 today compared to 5 years ago, you're going to see a plethora of possibilities for nonprofits that simply didn't exist at all. So you're looking at the right time because the platform today is incredibly robust. And 5 years ago, you would have seen philanthropies, but you wouldn't have seen the transformation. So I encourage you to keep looking. And Andy's a great example of just how far Microsoft has come in the past 5 years.
I guess the only thing that I can add to what Keith and Christina said was, it does sometimes, when Microsoft, turns their focus towards a particular market or a segment, sometimes like any other big company, and no big software company is an exception. It takes them a while to kind of get their legs and get sorted on where they're going to go. And if you look at, the time frame that you gave was 5 years. I think that, there's two things that have happened in the past 5 years that are pretty significant. One of them is Microsoft's doubled down on their commitment to supporting the nonprofit space, and the investments that they've made are pretty significant, and in terms of scope and the amount of time and effort and money that they've invested, because they see opportunity there, and I understand why. And I think that that's a much it's come along a very long way in the last 5 years. But I think probably more importantly, and maybe the more valuable outcome of all of that in the last 5 years, is the growing and dramatically expanding partner network that Microsoft has begun to cultivate in the nonprofit space. And there's a lot of names. There's a lot of solutions out there that are building on top of the common data model. There's a lot of partners who are investing now in taking nonprofit, if there's such a thing as nonprofit technology. I'm kind of reluctant to use that term, but solutions that serve the nonprofit industry or market. There's a lot more of them now than there were 5 years ago, and a lot of them are very good, and they're very smart, and they're very agile new companies. And there's new thinking and new ways of addressing the business of managing donors and volunteers and fundraising that are exciting and interesting, and they're going to help nonprofits grow and sustain themselves for years to come. And this is why we made the commitments that we made, and we invested and partnered with companies like MISSION, was because that was our vision, and we saw that coming, and we basically established the platform for the Arthritis Foundation for the next decade. And that needs to be done every now and then, and now we've just done it. And I still have a job, so it worked. So anyway, I think the key point is that the platform's evolved, the technology's evolved, and the partner network just gets better every day. And I think it's worth taking a look at. If you haven't already, it's something to take a look at.
So we just have a couple minutes, and I know we have more questions, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time today. So maybe if each of you could just offer just a quick take on advice around next steps, and how to for those who have questions, where they can go to get their answers. So Andy, you want to start us here?
Oh, that's easy. If you can think it, you can do it. And it's I know that people are reluctant to make leaps. It's not really a leap of faith. I think if you do your homework and you get the right kind of help, like you get consultative help, or you get you do the research and you make sure that you find the right people, right vendors to partner with, it's doable, and it's going to save you money, and it's going to help you. It's going to help you cope with the challenges that all nonprofits are going to face in the future. How do you do that? Your roadmap for doing that, it's going to be different for every company, and thus, why, if you don't have that kind of talent in-house, and it's okay to not have that kind of talent in-house, you need to seek help and get the right advice and guidance, and partner with the right people, and you'll get there. And you'll have a better system. You'll have happier staff. You'll have happier constituents, and it's all good. It is possible to do it all right, and but you need to be planful.
Absolutely. And just to piggyback on what Andy said, at the end of the day, technology should serve your strategy. Technology is never going to be the panacea for all your problems, but strategy and a vision for the organization is the North Star that we all need to aim for. We need support sometimes to help us get there, technology is part of the answer. I would also say, if you're going to go down this route and you're going to try and make a big life choice, which is exactly what we're talking about today, it's really important to not get bogged down in features. Don't think about the nitty-gritty. Think about what you want to do as an organization. Look at the platform, look at the possibilities, see how that aligns with your strategy, and take it from there, because there's so many options. Be open-minded. Don't get bogged down in the granularity, because you need to see yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And that would be my best advice to any organization looking to make dramatic change in terms of their donor management and fundraising operations.
It's great. Well, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Kaya, for pulling us all together today. And thanks everyone who attended. And please reach out to any or all of us with your questions. We'd love to help you as you're on this path. I would be remiss if I didn't plug Heller's white papers. We think about this stuff all the time. We talk about it amongst ourselves, and then we write it all down and we put it out there. And we think these papers are a lot of fun. So if you have some weekend free time, if you have family events and you need gifts, you can print them out. But until next time, thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having me, Keith.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks, Andy.
I think that's a wrap.
I guess we're done.